Do you believe in ghosts? Welcome back to Paranormal Experience. I'm Melissa.
I'm Mandi.
And I'm Kelly.
Today we're going to talk about the legend of Mels hole. I do want to warn you that this episode might contain the humor of a 13-year-old boy. And there is a trigger warning. There is a small amount of animal abuse. It could be kind of triggering. So I thought everyone knew the legend of Mels hole. And I went into work and I'm talking about Mels hole. I don't know what made me think of Mels hole. But I was the only one who knew what I was talking about. No one else had ever heard of Mels hole. And now I'm talking to Kelly, and she has not heard of Mels hole either.
Never heard of it.
This is a very big legend. I can't believe you guys have never heard of it.
I thought maybe it pertained to you, you know, Mel, Melissa.
It's
Mel.
not,
Oh my God.
not my hole. So basically, this legend started with a show on AM radio called Coast to Coast. This show aired in the middle of the night. I think it's Monday through Sunday. It's still on today with a different host. But at this time, it's 1997, and this show is hosted by Aril. A lot of people know of him. I mean, this is kind of a famous show. It's all paranormal. Actually, I have a... Coast to Coast AM is a live talk show. I think that that's important, that it's live. Is on more than 600 stations in North America, Canada, Mexico, and Guam. The show covers topics such as paranormal phenomena, time travel, alien abductions, and conspiracies. So if you wanted to know who was abducted at the latest trailer park, this is your show. I mean, it was conspiracy theories everywhere. I mean, some of the people that called in were clearly crazy, but not all of them. I mean, there was a lot of just paranormal people that loved this show.
I'm surprised I've never heard of it because I think I would have listened to this.
My uncle listened to it when I was growing up. I don't know if that's how I knew about it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I've heard of it, but I've never listened to it either.
No.
I didn't know what it was for.
Right, because the title doesn't give it away, right?
Yeah.
Coast to Coast Radio.
Yeah.
I know that I have listened to it, but it's not something I would listen to often because I'm a night sleeper. My new puppy's playing with a toy, and you guys are probably going to hear new puppy noises in the background because it is what it is. So the host was legendary Aril, as I mentioned earlier, who retired from the show in 2002, citing concern for the safety of him and his family.
So he retired because of the safety of his family?
Yeah, so I don't know a lot about it, but I do know that there's been a lot of legal things with this show, just lawsuits and just drama, and there was people outside of his house.
Oh my God.
He felt threatened and he decided to retire.
No.
And he hosted this show for a lot of years. I don't know how many, but it was a lot. So the AM radio icon passed away in 2018 of multiple drug overdose in his home at the age of 72. Now, reading about this, it seemed like it was more of an accidental overdose. It seemed to be prescription medications, although I'm really not up on my drugs, so I could be wrong. It seemed like it was just a combination of prescription medications and some health conditions, and also just being 72. That'll do it alone, you know. So, as I said earlier, this was a live radio show, and people would call into Coast to Coast Radio in the middle of the night and either add to a specific topic, or sometimes they would just take callers to create a topic. They actually had multiple phone lines. Like, they had first-time caller phone lines, repeat caller phone lines. There was a whole system to it, not just one phone line to call in.
Okay.
So this was a pretty big thing. So today we're going to talk about the claims made by Mel Waters on Coast to Coast Radio. Supposedly, host Aril received a fax, because this is 1997, from a man who claimed his name to be Mel Waters.
Mel's the guy with the never-ending hole, and we're going to ask him about it here in a moment. Now to Eastern Washington. I guess this is Eastern Washington. Mel, are you there?
Yes, I am.
First of all, Mel, thank you for answering. What are you doing up at this time of the morning?
Well, after I sent the fax, I'm living in town here now because we had a couple of our buildings out there cave in after the big snows.
The fax claimed that Mel had a potentially bottomless pit on his property. And that sounds a bit boring, but there's so much more to this story. This was told in 5 phone calls. Most of them are about an hour. One is about 2 hours over a 5-year period.
So he would just call in and talk for at least an hour at a time?
Yeah. Usually they would recap. I mean, clearly the first time they told the story. Then they would recap. They would talk about new developments, and they would open it up to callers as well. Callers would call and ask questions and whatnot, and they would discuss it. If you want to listen to these calls, they are on YouTube, provided by Artificially Intelligence Radio. I'm going to go through each call, kind of give a summary. We're going to talk about it. You guys can add in, what you want during it or, after, whatever. Okay. So call number 1. Art receives a fax. He claims to have then reached out to Mel to come onto the show. Mel is calling from Ellensburg, Washington. He claims he is not currently living on the land with the hole because a storm has recently come through, knocked down some of their outbuildings. There is no power. He's staying in Ellensburg, but that is not where the hole is. The hole is 9 miles west of Ellensburg.
Okay.
He claims the hole was there when they purchased the property. He asked about the hole and was told that it had always been there and that the neighbors had always thrown their garbage into the hole. The previous owner had supposedly owned the property for 30 to 40 years. Mel started to wonder why the hole was not filling up. He himself claimed to have thrown a fridge into the hole, some old TV tubes, which should implode, something along those lines. Never heard a splash, never heard anything. The only sound that would be made when you throw something down the hole is if you could visibly see it hit the side. So just nothing. After you throw it in, just nothing. Throw a whole fridge in, nothing.
So you would hear it if it hit the side going down, but never hear it hit the bottom.
Correct.
Okay.
This hole was supposedly 9 feet, 9 inches wide. Mel claimed to have made a metal cover for the hole out of fear that a local child might fall into it, never to be seen again. Oh God, wouldn't that be terrible?
That would be horrible.
He tells us the location of the hole is in Monastash, if I'm saying that right, about 9 miles west of Ellensburg. He won't give a more precise location because he doesn't want the general public running to the hole to see the hole, throwing everything into the hole. So the first thing he did was he took some fishing line and he lowered down a 1-pound weight and a pack of lifesavers. And this is supposedly an old fisherman's trick. Mel claims he used to do some shark fishing when he lived in California. The shark fisherman's trick is supposedly you put a mackerel or whatever onto your line and you toss it out with a pack of lifesavers. The lifesavers melt and then they're no longer on the line, but they provided enough weight to get the bait out there. What I don't understand about this is, first of all, there's packaging. How are you putting them on with no packaging? Second, why don't you just use a weight? I don't know. I don't know anything about shark fishing. Maybe it makes sense in some other way. But the lifesavers in this case were to see if there was water. If he pulled the line back up and the lifesavers are still intact in their packaging and dry, then there's no water. But if there is water, they would be wet and melty and disgusting. So Mel put 4,500 feet of line down the hole with the lifesavers, brought it back up, and it was not wet.
That's what, like a 4,500 or a 45-story building, right? Like 10 foot per story, or 450. What's my math?
I have no 4,500? 4,500 feet.
Divided by 10 would be 450.
Yeah.
So 450 tall
Story
building.
Oh my God. That puts that in perspective a lot.
Mel claims that he had like a rig that he put over the hole, like a shark fishing rig. So this would have like a lot of line on it. So he lowered the lifesavers, reeled them back up, and then he just sent it back down with the weight on it. He sent it down, but he didn't pull it back up. So he just kept adding line. And Mel claims he put 80,000 feet of line into the hole. How many story building is it?
That'd be like 800, right? 800-story building?
Okay, so to play devil's advocate, how does he know that didn't like get caught up somewhere and just be slack? You know?
I agree.
Yeah.
And people did call in and ask about that. And they asked particularly because he was saying like the line was taut.
Okay.
Right? So as if the weight was still below it.
Yeah.
So that's how he knows it's not like coiling up.
I mean, I'm just picturing just fishing, right? Like when there's a fish on it, the line is tighter than when there's not.
Right.
Do you know what I'm saying? Like there's
with
something.
the weight on it, right? So
Yeah.
the weight is pulling.
Yeah.
But then people were asking about the weight of the actual line. Like how much line do you put down before the line itself becomes the weight?
Right.
Oh,
You know what I'm saying? To pull it
yeah.
tight. So Mel did, I believe this is in call 2, so we're not quite there yet, but we'll talk about it now. He did weigh the line. So what he claims to have done was he had like a clip type weight is kind of how I imagined it, right? So he didn't pull the line up and weigh it. He put like a clip on it and like weighed it like as it was hanging. And he said that it was about 17, 18 pounds of line. Plus the weight.
Okay.
At the bottom. So here are some odd things about the hole. First, like I mentioned earlier, no sound from the hole. Even if you yell down the hole, there is no echo. Animals won't go near the hole. To get his dogs to come near the hole, he has to pull them. They dig their feet in. Birds don't land on the hole or on the cover to the hole or on the edge of the hole. A neighbor claims he threw his dead dog into the hole. A few days later, saw the dog with the same collar and everything roaming about, but the dog would not come to him. So, pet cemetery hole.
See, I was thinking it was like time to send like a person down the hole.
That is talked about a lot throughout this saga. And Mel insists a person should not go down the hole, that it's too dangerous. You don't know what's down there. And I agree with Mel. Because the further down you go, the air becomes thicker and there's less oxygen in it. So if you send a person down the hole, you don't know when they're going to pass out.
Right, but I'm thinking like, when people go scuba diving really deep, like they'd have like an oxygen tank or an astronaut outfit or, something where they can get oxygen.
And
that's a good
point.
That's
a good point. And people do make a lot of good points during these calls, but it is kind of things that would be maybe harder to obtain or cost money. You know what I mean? Like somebody at one point is asking, can you charter a plane and fly it over the hole? We'll get to that. Mel does say a lot of dead cows, because that's the area they live in, have been thrown down the hole. He has never known of any of them to return. So more on the appearance of the hole. As I said earlier, it's 9 feet 9 inches wide. There's a stone wall around the hole. And the stone wall, from what Mel can tell, goes down about 15 feet. Then some soil, dirt, and more rocks. And then he can't really see any further.
So somebody built around it at one point.
You would think.
How are they getting the cows over the wall?
I would assume maybe some type of machine. I mean, because how do you get a dead cow anywhere?
Yeah.
You got to move it somehow.
Like a backhoe
maybe some
or
sort of,
something,
heavy machinery. I mean, if there's farmland, they could have heavy machinery, right? In this call, a caller does note that the Mariana Trench is 36,000 feet deep, and that is the deepest natural place known on Earth. So this would be deeper than the Mariana Trench if it actually is 80,000 feet deep. Mel claims that he has put it in his will that when he dies, he is to be thrown in the hole. And Mel also notes during this call that he feels spiritual near the hole. Before we move on to call 2, here's some random facts about holes.
Okay.
That's just what I always wanted to know.
So as I stated earlier, the deepest natural place on Earth is the Mariana Trench, which is 36,000 feet. The deepest hole ever dug by humans is 40,230 feet and is in Russia. It is called the Kola Super Deep Borehole. Now, one thing that I found like reading about Mel's hole is that people claim that if it is that deep, it would collapse in upon itself. Like it would need to be wider, right? Or else it would collapse in. But I did notice that these Kola super deep boreholes, because there's more than one, there's like 5 of them, are only 9 inches in diameter. So it's not even big enough for a person to fit in. I'm not sure why they dug them or what purpose they serve, but those are over 40,000 feet deep. So about half of what Mel claims his hole to be. And they don't collapse in on themselves. I also don't know, though, does the machinery that they dig them with maybe line them with something? I don't really know what a borehole is, but...
It would be like a boring, stuff that...
Right.
Does...
Yeah,
you can't see me, but my finger's going in a circle, yeah.
That's what I picture, too.
Yeah. Like a drill, like a boring drill, right?
Yeah,
like something like...
Right, but it might be
like the guy from Puppet Master with the drill on his head, you know?
Okay, I'm thinking more like a oil well, like they drill and then they put piping down there to hold it.
See, that's what I'm saying. Like, I don't know if there's potentially like something
Yeah.
lining the hole. I don't know.
The lining of the hole.
Yes. So my thoughts were groundwater. And I did notice, because I did look at this area on Google Maps, there's a lot of water in this area. So I would think that the groundwater would be more shallow. I mean, I don't know that for sure. But, I mean, you would think that you would find groundwater in a higher level in an area with a lot of water as opposed to like a desert type area. So what I found is that groundwater is almost everywhere on Earth. But it does vary. It could be a few feet down, and average, it is a few feet down. But it could range to hundreds of feet down or potentially even thousands of feet down. 80,000 feet? I don't know. But it could be thousands of feet down. I found that Washington State in particular has a range from a few feet to thousands of feet. So I can't say, oh, this is wrong because the groundwater. I can't.
Right.
It could be thousands of feet deep.
Well, I'm even thinking maybe like lava tube kind of thing.
What is a lava tube?
Well, it's like when lava, beneath Earth's crust or from the core, wherever it comes from, when it shoots out of a volcano, sometimes it leaves like tubes. Like we've gone to Hawaii and you can like literally walk down in these tubes where, it's come up through the earth. I mean, and over that way, I know like in Idaho, they have like a whole old volcanic park, that was formed from volcanic activity.
That's a good theory.
Then you would think
Could
at the very
be.
bottom, maybe it's lava. I don't know. Maybe that's why nothing comes back.
Maybe. I also looked at the temperature. The temperature increases about 3 degrees Celsius. I couldn't find it in Fahrenheit and I didn't convert it, but per 100 miles of depth. But what I do have in Fahrenheit is 80,000 feet underground should be, on average, well over 1,000 degrees Fahrenheit, but that can also vary. The farther you go underground, the less oxygen exists and the pressure increases. I think that it actually is so much that it can like cave in your skull, depending on how far you go down. Here's the most interesting fact. If you measure the Earth straight through, it's over 39 million feet through. The Earth's crust is 132,000 feet thick. So Mel's hole is actually not even all the way through the Earth's crust.
Crusty hole.
The last thing about the first call that I want to mention is that they do talk about the government. And they do say that the government would be interested in a hole of this sort for like nuclear waste disposal, like that type of thing.
Okay.
Maybe that's why the dog came back.
Yeah.
Maybe. Okay, so does anybody have any questions about anything in call 1, or should I just move on to call 2?
Call 2.
I'm good. Call 2.
Okay. So I don't know the exact date of call 2, but it seems to be relatively close to call 1. Mel calls and basically says his life has been turned upside down. Some sort of government organization, the military maybe, showed up to his property and refused to let him on the site. They cited that there was a plane crash. Mel doesn't know what type of plane, and that they had to do an investigation into this plane crash. But Mel saw no evidence of a plane crash, no smoke, like no debris, no large objects in the distance. So they refused to let him on the site, and when Mel persisted, they basically threatened him. He doesn't say it like that, but they basically threatened him and said it would be real easy to find a drug lab on this property. Mel stated that there was nothing illegal on the property, but what he does at the property is he grows Native American medicinal plants. So there is kind of stuff that could be misconstrued into looking like a drug lab.
Oh, peyote.
Yeah. So he took the threat really serious.
Does Mel sample his plants?
I would assume. So the next strange thing that Mel talks about in call 2 is that a neighbor claimed to Mel that he saw a dark beam emanating from the hole at night. So like a darker than darkness type beam emanating from the hole. It's described as a light, blacker than black, reaching into the sky. Armed soldiers were on the property, and they put up Jersey barriers, which I didn't know what that was.
I don't either.
It's just like large pieces of concrete to prevent like anybody from driving like a vehicle back there.
Okay.
Mel also had a message from a real estate agent on his answering machine. A generous offer had been made for the property, and he claims he has not yet responded.
But the property wasn't.
It was not for sale.
Okay.
But he's curious about the offer because on one hand, they could claim he has a drug lab, and on the other hand, he could accept a generous offer. This is when they opened the line to callers, and some callers were curious about the weight of the line, like I had, told you guys about earlier.
Mm-hmm.
And he estimated it to be at the 17 to 18 pounds. Or I'm sorry, the caller was actually on call 1, but he is responding to the caller and saying that, it's 17 to 18 pounds with the sinker. He does predict, because of this, that if he keeps dropping line into the hole, it's going to break from the sheer weight of the line. So Mel decided to talk to some of the neighbors, and an elderly man in the area that was very familiar with the hole told Mel that there used to be stone columns around the hole. Through conversation, Mel gathered that these would have resembled Stonehenge. Art asks for photos of the hole, but Mel claims that he can't get close enough because of the military. Mel speculates that the government is hiding the hole so it can't be seen from the air, after someone suggests he charter a plane to take pictures. Scott from Kirkland, who is a caller, claims he grew up in the area and had heard of the hole from one of his college professors. He claims he heard the story in 1989 or 1990. This is how we find out that the land is supposedly very close to a huge military reservation, which is still active today. Mel talks about the offer and what he would potentially like to do, and he says ultimately he would like to relocate to Australia. There's lots of talk about the hollow earth theory, which is a theory that originated in the early 1800s that states that the earth is a shell with walls about 800 miles thick, and there's lots of land underneath us. They talk about calling the media, the governor, the sheriff, and a caller even suggests that they call a psychic. I'm not sure why, but
maybe they could just pick something up.
I see a hole. Very deep hole.
Very deep hole.
Tuning into the other side. So call 3 is in 2002. So it's actually 5 years later. And I want to remind you that this is live radio. So I've listened to all of these calls, and I only found one inconsistency, which kind of strikes me as odd.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, because if you're lying, if this is a made-up story, how could you keep telling it with no inconsistencies, especially with a 5-year gap? I don't know. I guess you could.
I mean, if you say something enough, you start to believe it yourself.
That is true.
Or maybe he really does believe it. He's either telling the truth or he thinks he's telling the truth.
Right.
Do you know what I mean?
This call starts out with Art Bell saying that he thought the Blair Witch Project was real. And then he asks Mel, is this another Blair Witch Project? To which Mel says, no, it's not. And he's not even seen the Blair Witch Project. They do a lot of recap, which happens in all of the additional calls. One thing that I noticed, this is the inconsistency I was talking about, is that he claims that he put 3,600 feet of line down the hole the first time with the lifesavers. And in the original call, he claimed it was, I believe, 4,200 feet. But he does say things like, if I can recall, I'm trying to remember,
Mm-hmm.
things like that.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, I can see somebody potentially making that mistake.
Mm-hmm.
But that was the only inconsistency that I noticed. In the recap, he talks a bit more about he, in his retirement, studies medicinal plants. That is his main thing. That is what he wants to focus on, is these medicinal plants. In this call, he claims that the property is on the Monastash Ridge. So now we have a little bit more direction to the property.
Mm-hmm.
It is 9 miles east of Ellensburg on the Monastash Ridge. Mel didn't tell us this in previous calls, but he claims a guy would come throw tires into the hole. From a tire shop. He worked at a tire shop. He would do a weekly drop and just dispose of tires into this hole. So, I mean, fridges have gone in the hole. Tires have gone in the hole. It's a very deep hole.
Cows. Dogs.
Very wide hole. Mel's hole should be packed full. Mel also mentions the whalebone tree in Ellensburg. He stated that people say the hole has been there as long as the whalebone has been in the tree. If you Google, Ellensburg whalebone, you will find a picture. It's, actually in somebody's front yard. There's actually, I found more than one picture. I wouldn't even have known it was a whalebone. Do you remember when I showed you the picture, Mandy, of the whalebone?
Yes.
Let me show Kelly. It's actually pretty cool looking. A tree has grown. It's just kind of sticking out of the tree and into the ground in somebody's front yard. And there is an old legend that some old Moby Dick type guy brought the whalebone up and it just grew that way. It's a pretty neat picture though. Mel starts mentioning Nevada, which is going to be relevant later, and working with the Native American communities there because of his medicinal plant research. He mentions this a little bit in Call 2, but more of it in Call 3. But like I said, it's relevant later. They also state that there are other mystery holes in the world. Mels is not the only one, which is also relevant later. So to me, I kind of think, is this foreshadowing because it's a story? Or is this all just kind of coincidence? Again, there's a lot of recapping, but new news is that Mel claims the government made him an offer he couldn't refuse. The government leased the land in perpetuity for the rest of his life and gave Mel $250,000 a month.
Ooh.
And Mel headed over to Australia and lived in Perth. Built facilities for his plants, did some wombat rescue, and was just living it up and loving it.
Mel has quite the life.
Quite the
hasn't he?
life. Shark fisherman, hole finder, wombat rescuer. But now Mel is back in the United States, and he's broke.
What?
Yep. And it's crazy because he said that the government had made all of the arrangements. In those arrangements, they even included the Australian government. They even spoke to the Australian government. So this was a really big thing, right? They wanted Mel gone. They gave him all this money. And the Australian government was in on the deal. Mel claims in Australia he imported the plants he grew near the hole, and they had remarkable properties. Whereas the same plants he grew away from the hole did not. Remarkable curing properties. Apparently, Mel was supposed to be on the show sooner, but he was a no-show. And he states that there was an altercation on a bus. The transit authorities started questioning people and kind of pulled Mel away to question him. Mel told them he would answer some questions, but he was in a hurry. They said, "Oh, that's okay. We'll take you where you need to go." And he got into a vehicle, and then that's all he remembers. Until he woke up 12 days later in an alley to some bums trying to get him to sing on the road again because Mel resembles Willie Nelson.
See, Mel's getting a little...
Pretty specific.
I know. I mean... Okay, so backtrack 1 second. So when you were talking about the men, that reminds me of the Men in Black. That's what it made me think of. Something like that, right?
Right. So Mel had no ID, no keys. He was wearing the same filthy clothes that he had disappeared in. And there was a spot on his arm with tape residue from, an IV or, something like that. But the most notable thing about the time frame when Mel disappeared is that when he woke up, his molars were removed.
Okay.
Why were his molars removed? Nobody knows. But they were. He had to call his nephew collect. This is 2002, though, that he's saying this. And and it seemed to me that this story occurred not that long before. I feel like 2002, we weren't really making collect calls anymore. I guess not everyone had a cell phone. I feel like you at least had a minute phone.
I had Sean in 2001, and I know when I had him, I did not have a cell phone. So.
We had cell phones and we had home phone back then.
Yeah, I think I had a cell phone, but it was it had minutes on it, and I had to reload it, and it was just for emergencies,
Mm-hmm.
Because they were more pricey. So now Mel gets into why he's broke, even though the government gave him all this money. In the earlier calls, Mel references the property as our property. He never does say just my property. It's our property. And apparently, the property was really his wife's. But somewhere in the middle of all of this, in the middle of the government taking over the property and not letting Mel back on it, and them making the deal and Mel taking his dogs, because he did take his dogs when he went to Australia, him and his wife got divorced. Sounds kind of right?
I mean,
you keep messing with that hole out there.
That's what she said.
So he was leasing the property from his ex-wife and like subletting it to the government.
oh.
And he says giving her like a big cut, like, you know. But, you know, she cut out the middleman. She wanted to stop all that. And they kind of like talk about, well, like, why would she do that? Like, you were taking care of her. Well, if it's her property, like, you shouldn't be doing that. Right? Like,
Yeah, because that's like, what, $3 million a year they were giving him?
yeah. Because of this, and because of apparently like some alterations that had been made to the property that like shouldn't have been made, Mel lost all rights to the property. So this is where Mel first talks about his belt buckle, because when the people took his teeth, they also took his belt buckle, which which was like strange, because this is just like a belt buckle that like Mel handmade with a fork and some other things. I guess he would like make these belt buckles, so we can add that. We should have made a Mel's whole resume, a Mel Waters resume, like shark fisherman, belt buckle maker.
Okay,
whole enthusiast.
Does he make the belt buckle out of a fork, or does he use a fork as a tool to make the belt?
No, the belt buckle is made from a fork and I believe some other pieces of metal. Okay. I don't know what it looks like. But this is the first he mentions it, and it is very relevant later. So, so he had made the belt buckle himself, and he doesn't know why. He claims that he does not know why they would have taken his belt buckle. Because
it's a weapon. Really?
Oh, well, maybe.
Right?
That's
Could
not
be.
it, though.
Okay.
But
Okay.
Good guess. I like your guess and your enthusiasm. Mel claims that he's like so out of money at this point. I know I'm jumping back and forth a little bit. It was kind of hard to like listen to these calls and
It's
like
okay.
keep everything like together, because you can find the transcript for the first call online, but not the rest of the calls. He's so down and out that he's selling plasma for cigarette money.
Wise.
Good choices.
Yeah.
Priorities. And Mel also reveals his age at this time to be 60, which I thought was kind of strange because he mentioned retirement.
Mm-hmm. It's young.
Very young to be retired.
You know, you can retire early when you're a shark fisherman. I make a lot of money.
Maybe he's making a lot of money in his retirement off of his medicinal plants.
Hmm?
Could, right?
And his belts.
Yes. Which he did sell some of. So good observation, Kelly.
There you go.
Mel also claims in this call that he dug up a gun near the hole and gave it to someone for a deposit on an apartment, which, you know, that seems like a weird deal to me. But you know what? I've known people in my life that make weird deals like that, and they always are successful in it. I've never.
When you say he dug it up, like, did he know it was buried there, or did he just...
Well, because of his plants. He was digging in the yard because of his plants, and he dug up a gun, right? And so this is kind of relevant, like, with the belt. He digs up this gun, and it's like a very old gun, like a World War II style gun. He did at one point, I think in call 4, mention what type of gun it was. I didn't note it. But he traded it to some guy for a deposit on an apartment. Mel tried to reach out to the guy, but found out the guy had disappeared. So he couldn't get the gun back because the guy had disappeared. But Mel was later told by someone who knew this guy that when the gun was fired, it wouldn't make a sound. If the gun was set near a radio, it would change the radio stations. And if you waved your hand near the gun, you could change the radio stations. And it would often be radio stations that were out of date. For example, like a ball game from the 60s. So it's kind of a interdimensional radio tuner.
Huh.
because it was dug up near the hole.
Right.
Mel's beginning to believe that anything that surrounds the hole has unusual properties, quote unquote.
All right.
In Australia, some of the things Mel brought from the U.S., he does not specifically say his plants. I feel that he is alluding to his plants, were given to people with advanced HIV, and they were cured. So he's claiming that when he grows plants near the hole, it cures people.
Okay.
Things near the hole are somehow special. They actually mention the Ballad of Mel's Hole here. Did you ever listen to that, Kelly? I sent it to you. No. We listened to the Ballad of Mel's Hole. You should actually look it up. The Ballad of Mel's Hole. It's on YouTube. It's not the first. You have to scroll a little bit. It's actually really good.
I don't recall that on MTV.
Mandi thought I was crazy when I was shocked that no one had heard of Mel's Hole around me. And now that she finds out about all this stuff associated with Mel's Hole, she sees my point of view. She told me that earlier.
I know, I did.
In this call, and I don't know a lot about this situation, I should probably know more about it, but Mel claims that there is a connection between Heaven's Gate and the hole. And that was what, like a cult that committed suicide, right? He doesn't really go into much more on that. He just says that there's a connection, which if he doesn't have like a good standing to say that, I think that's kind of mean, like a horrible thing to say. But I mean, because all those poor people, but he gives out an email, melwaters@home.com. I emailed it and I received a bounce back. Now, I thought @home.com was like an odd, I don't know, what do you call it? Like email domain?
Right.
Yeah. So I asked Jeff to look into it, and he did find that used to be a real email domain @home.com. But he said it looked like it was only in use prior to 2002. But this call was in 2002, so maybe they cut it off shortly after.
Okay.
Now, Kelly, you had some additions.
Yeah, you were talking about the Heaven's Gate cult and how Mel said they were associated with the hole. It's very interesting that they believe, and what their belief was, that they could become immortal aliens and ascend into heaven by rejecting their human nature.
And he does specifically say that the Heaven's Gate incident was just a few months before. So I think that if that's just hoopla, then that is like a really terrible thing. Because, I mean, those people had families, but he doesn't really give a reason as to why he believes that. So I don't know. Call number 4 is the call that is 2 hours long, and it is also the call where things get crazy. I mean, you got to go through like the first hour. They're really recapping. Oh, and also he says that, I don't know the date, but he does say that 1997 was 5 years ago.
Okay.
When they recap, again, everything sounds the same. Like there's not really any inconsistencies in their story, which really shocked me because, I mean, this is before, I mean, the internet existed at this time, but it wasn't like it is now, you know? So it's not like people, you were saying like, oh, go back and listen to this. I mean, they did do like reruns of the episodes, but like nobody could just go to like YouTube and find them, you know?
Right. This
was all live radio. I would think that they would make a mistake if they were lying, but I don't know, maybe not.
Well, I can tell you, you know, when you had me listen to some of it, shockingly, Mel seemed intelligent. And
right, like you would imagine he sounds crazy.
Yeah, like from what you're saying and like hearing you retell it, it does make him sound very crazy. But when you listen to him, he's very well-spoken, very intelligent, very normal, acknowledges that this is weird. You know, like he's aware of how weird it is, and
it does not fit. The voice doesn't fit the story. You
would
imagine
that's
it to
a good
be
way to put it. Yeah,
Yeah. The way this episode starts out, Mel does admit that he gets a lot of rides from truckers. Apparently he's famous with truckers, which would be because they're up all night, right? So they're listening to Coast radio.
Yeah.
Here we're going into things that Mel found near the hole. This is associated with a belt buckle. So Mel claims he found 10 dimes in a red Lucky Chinese envelope. Do you guys, I have a picture in my head, but do you guys know what he means by like a red Lucky Chinese envelope?
I don't.
I have like a picture in my head of like some jewelry my mom had like when I was young, and it would be like in like a cloth type envelope. I don't know if that's what they're referring to here though. While digging near the hole for his plants, he found 10 dimes in a red Lucky Chinese envelope. He placed these dimes in belt buckles that he was making, and he didn't realize it, he claims, at the time, but these were 1943 Roosevelt dimes with a mint mark B. Those dimes do not exist.
In this dimension.
Right. So this is kind of when they start to allude to interdimensional travel of things.
You can buy them on Amazon.
Oh, the Chinese envelopes?
Mm-hmm.
That is not what I was picturing.
Yeah, it says that people use it to gift money to family or children.
Mint mark B does not exist. What do we have? Like D, we have P. Actually, my 13-year-old knows this. There's another one too. D, P. I don't know, but we don't have a B. So they speculate that this could be from a dimension or plane where the Nazis won the war and the mint mark is Berlin. But they're just speculating. And in this call, they talk about the Terra server. Do you guys know what that is?
What is it?
Terra server?
No.
I have never heard of that. Jeff had clearly heard of it. Like, he was like, oh, yeah. But, I mean, he's been super into computers. He's an IT guy, so.
I've heard of it, but I'm not real.
So this is where they talk about the Terra server, and they urge people to go to the Terra server and look up Mel's property. And, like, if you go to Ellensburg and you zoom out, you know, you look along the Manastash Ridge, they say that you can see white blocks where the government has placed white blocks over Mel's property. If you go to the Mels Hole Research Organization Facebook page,
we need to follow this page.
The profile picture appears to be the Terra server picture. Now, is it real? I don't know. When I showed Jeff, he was like, "Oh yeah, that's it." you guys going? They're going to the Facebook page.
I'm looking up a Terra.
What's the page again?
It is the Mels Hole Research Organization.
This is interactive.
That is it. Kelly's got it. Now, could somebody have made that between then and now? I mean, of course you could make something like that today. I don't know. I don't know if it's real or not.
It only has 465 followers?
Yeah, it doesn't seem to be a very active page. They also have the whalebone picture on their timeline if you scroll down. So that is a hole. Kelly's looking at a picture on the Facebook page. It is a hole. If you look up Mel's Hole, you will find a variety of pictures of holes that people speculate to be Mel's Hole.
Yeah, so this is not Mel's Hole. Oh, there's the whale.
Yeah. It's a huge bone. I don't know. I just never saw a whale jawbone before. Which led me to look up on the internet, like, if you can buy whale bones, and you can. You can buy whale bones online. This is where the call starts to get weird. Mel claims in his other calls that he was traveling back and forth to Nevada for his plants, and he claims that the Native Americans in Nevada reached out to him. Actually, I'm kind of confused about that part. I don't know. I'm kind of ignorant, I'm going to admit it, when it comes to culture. He says Native Americans sometimes referring to like the people he does his plants with, but these people are Basque. Are you guys familiar?
Mm-mm.
I looked up the Basque people, and they didn't seem to be a Native American tribe to me. I'm not really sure, but he does refer to them as the Basque tribe, so I am going to refer to them that way.
The Basques were, if not the very first Europeans to set foot in North America, they were among the first. And here's a drawing of them. They do appear to be dressed like Native Americans, but they're actually from Europe. So, like, they are the first.
So I saw that some of them were from, like, Spain.
Yeah.
Things like that.
So that makes sense. If they were, like, one of the first, maybe they kind of assimilated or adapted to.
And he even says, like, this is a reservation. The Basque tribe in Nevada reached out to him because of the Monastash Ridge hole and invited him to see their hole. So now we have a second hole. The Nevada hole was similar to the Washington hole in many ways, but also very different. Instead of a stone collar, this Nevada hole had a metal collar. It was still 9 feet, 9 inches wide, the same diameter as the Washington hole, but the collar was 2 feet wide and 2 feet deep. It was what Mel describes as a locking collar. Like, it had, like, cutouts in it to where he thought, like, something could come from above and, like, lock to it. The metal of the collar went down into the hole as far as you could see. So it had metal sides, the hole did. Now, this is not the Basque tribe's land, but it was state land. Like, they lived, like, on a reservation. It was state land. Here's just some interesting things about the hole. This hole also makes no noise, not even if you drop something on the metal collar, like a metal tool. You could drop, like, a metal tool on the collar, and you hear nothing. The metal collar is warm and emanates heat. So much so that you could put a tent up to it and it'll keep you warm, but it won't set something on fire. They claim that they can trace the hole back to the 1800s. Animals also won't go by this hole, and this hole also emanates a black beam of light into the sky. So they decided to perform experiments on this hole. Mm-hmm. The first experiment was the ice experiment. I apologize for the puppy noises again.
Never apologize for the puppy noises.
They had 2 bags of ice. So they put one on the surface, and they had, like, some sort of large basket that was hoisted over on, like, some, like, lines, right? And they waited for the ice on the surface to kind of, like, get melty, and then they lowered the second bag of ice, just regular 7-Eleven ice, he claims, into the hole. When they pulled it back up, the ice was not melted. It was intact. It had been left down there for 30 minutes, and the ice on the surface had melted, but the ice that was down the hole changed composition. It was no longer ice. It looked like ice, felt like ice, but wasn't cold. So they decided to dispose of the ice. They threw the ice into the fire. The ice set a flame. Well, not really a flame, but the way I picture it from his description is, you know how when you have, like, a really hot fire and it's super hot, so hot that, like, the embers are burning, but there's not really a flame. Mm-hmm. That's kind of how I picture it. It gave off heat and became a heat source, a never-ending heat source. Like, it didn't go out. One of the guys, because he's with some people from the Basque tribe, right? One of the guys put some in his wood stove in his cabin and used it to heat his cabin. They repeated this experiment, and sometimes the ice melted, sometimes it didn't. About 1 out of 3 times, they would get this fuel-type material. Art asks Mel to take pictures or video, And he's done that with, the Washington hole. And there's always a reason that Mel cannot get pictures or video. I mean, cameras and video were different then. First of all, camcorders were really expensive, right? You couldn't just record stuff on your phone. 2002? You don't think they were?
No, because we got one. It wasn't.
No?
Mm-mm.
Mel does say, he wants to respect this tribe. He doesn't think that they'll allow him to take pictures. He does. He always has a reason, and it always sounds like a valid reason. Mm-hmm. But he can never get pictures or video, right? So here's where the trigger warning for, the animal cruelty comes up. They talked about a person going down there. And Mel says he had to talk him out of it because, look what happened to the ice. What would happen to a person? Collectively, they decided, and Mel says he's ashamed of himself, to put a sheep down the hole. The sheep didn't want to go down the hole. He claimed it dug its feet in. It didn't want to go toward the hole.
No.
But they made it. In order to get it into the crate that they had put the ice in, I assume it's the same, crate, somebody had to, punch it or, knock it between the eyes and kind of, knock at it silly. And then they put the sheep in the crate over the hole. When the sheep was in the crate over the hole, supposedly they could not hear the sheep anymore. No sound, but they could see the sheep struggling, not wanting to be in the hole, but they could no longer hear the screams of the sheep. He estimates that they got the sheep down about 700 feet when they felt the movement of the basket stop. They lowered the sheep the rest of the way, 1,400 feet altogether, which was how much line that they had. When they got to the end of the line, they felt an extreme vibration on the collar of the hole. He describes it as static electricity. They left the sheep for about 30 minutes and then hoisted it back up. The box or crate itself was normal, but the sheep was not moving. The poor sheep was dead. They took it to a nearby table and decided to cut it open. Although the sheep looked normal from the outside, it looked cooked on the inside. The internal organs were gone and a gel was in their place. There was what appeared to be a tumor inside of the sheep. The tumor was pulsating, kind of like a heartbeat. I feel like you guys are listening to me really intently. You guys are looking at me really well.
We are.
They decided to cut it open. The outside was said to be really tough, but they did get through it. What they found inside the tumor was what Mel would refer to as a fetal seal. A fetal seal with human eyes. It was alive. Not really a seal, but it had flippers and it looked mostly like a seal. The seal was connected to the tumor by what appeared to be an umbilical cord.
So are we talking like sea lion seal? Is that what you're saying?
He just says seal. I think seals and sea lions are different, right?
But she said it had flippers, so
okay.
So with no assistance, it separated from the tumor, because it was connected with the umbilical cord. They do not tell us how. They just says with no assistance. I don't know if it chewed through. It's what I pictured, right? Because it's what animals do when they're born. But usually the mom does it.
Right, the dead sheep.
And they repeatedly call it a tumor, but to me...
It sounds like a uterus.
Like a uterus. But, did the uterus not give birth to the placenta? Did they not take that out when they cut it out? Because babies aren't connected with an umbilical cord to a uterus. They're connected to a placenta.
Mm-hmm. Which is attached to the... Yeah.
So...
They're men.
Right. So, that's my thinking during this, right? Is this some sort of alien thing that we've never heard of before? Or is it grown men that don't really know all of the intricate parts of how a baby is born?
It is
which
weird,
I think it would
though,
be common.
that a sheep... let's just say the sheep was pregnant.
Okay. I didn't even think about that.
What does a fetus sheep look like? You know what I mean?
That
It
is a
doesn't have
great
flippers.
question.
It wouldn't, but like if it's not developed, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like
Oh, yeah,
humans
yeah.
have little buds, like
Yeah.
just
True.
I don't know.
Fetal sheep look like.
Never thought you'd Google that.
They definitely don't have flippers.
Mm-mm.
So, I mean, a fetal sheep looks like what you would expect a fetal sheep to look like. It looks like a very tiny sheep with no hair. So this fetal seal is basically wiggling around, looking at them, examining them, watching them with its human eyes. Eventually, Mel picked it up and took it off the table and put it on the ground. It smelled of ozone, which what do you think of when you think of ozone
Like
smell?
right before a thunderstorm when you kind of get that smell.
That's what Mandi said. I had no precedent in my mind for this. I was like, I have no idea what ozone would smell like. Like, I don't even identify that at all. Mel's hands were covered in goo, and the seal looked directly into his eyes.
And they had a special connection.
They did. They did have a special connection. Mel later claims that he was diagnosed with cancer directly before this, and now his cancer is cured. And he believes it was because of the seal. Mel claims they sat with the fetal seal for a few hours before it jumped back down the hole.
So it couldn't get off the table.
And he was with the Native American tribe that smokes his medicinal, right?
I mean, I don't know, but potentially.
We can assume. Possibly.
We can assume. They do make a joke. Like, Mel says that one of them wanted to put some marijuana down the hole to see if it would improve its effects. And then Art says something along the lines of, oh, that would make it a pothole. So Mel claims they dumped, like, everything down the hole. Like, you know, they had, I'm assuming, the tumor and whatnot. They dumped everything down the hole. Now, this is basically the end of Call 4. Mel claims that his goal is to go back to this hole and do more research. And he gives a different email, maybe because the at-home email domain is no longer correct. melwaters@attbi.com. That email also does not work. I've emailed them both. I did receive a bounce back. Because why not? Like,
When she told me that, I'm like, you are on some government list of people trying to contact Mel about his hole.
Mel claims he doesn't want money. He's not marketing anything. He's not making Mel's whole merchandise.
Oh my God, I would wear it.
It'd
You
be like
been
a
to Mel's
shirt with like a
hole?
hole and a seal, and it would say like Mel's hole. It's really wide on the bottom. So he just wants support and similar stories and good opinions on what could be going on here. The very last thing he says in this call is that the Basque elder gave him a gift. It was a 1943 Roosevelt dime, and supposedly he had found a red Chinese envelope with Roosevelt dimes in it.
Was it the B? Did it have the B on it?
Yep. And then the call ends. Now, I thought about that. If this was like an interdimensional like time thing, right? And that's why he found the, you know, the coins and the gun, and you would think that the Basque people would find something different from maybe the same time period or just like old time periods, right? Like they wouldn't find the same package of coins.
What if the holes are connected?
Ooh, the holes are connected.
Yeah.
Ooh, maybe there's like 10 holes like all over the world, and like when you go down them, you're in the middle. Come out the other side.
Do you think?
Or you throw something in one hole and it comes out the other hole.
Yeah.
So somewhere there's a hole with a
Lot
bunch
of
of
dead
garbage.
cows.
And dead cow cart guy.
Car guy. Yes.
Carcasses.
I like it.
Art does ask Mel, you have this dime. Can you get a picture of it?
Mm-hmm.
He claims that it is too small to get a good picture of. Which cameras were different then? I don't know. Isn't it as an excuse or as a reason? But he also claims that when he walks 15 feet away from the dime, it disappears. You can no longer see the dime. You have to be within a 15-foot radius of the dime to see the dime. To which I thought, well, it's a good thing he put it in a container, because he does mention that he was keeping it like in like a case, because you would lose it.
All right, here's the question.
You wouldn't be able to find it.
But if it disappears, whether it's in...
It doesn't matter.
If it's in a container?
So...
Well, it's always there, but you can only see it when you're within a 15-foot radius.
Oh, so he put it in the container, so even if he can't see it when he comes back, it's... Okay, I got it.
Maybe he needs glasses?
Maybe.
Okay, so let's say Mel... Okay, the dime is in this container, and he walks 15 feet away, and he can't see it, but you're not within... You're closer than 15 feet. Can you still see the dime? Or does it disappear?
That's a good question. He didn't elaborate. I don't know. It's too bad we can't reach him by email. I could ask him. But the email bounces
Maybe
back.
he's one of those Facebook followers.
Maybe.
I don't know. I looked. The last thing on there was from 2014.
Oh.
So that was call 4. That was where things get sticky. That was where there's a sheep and a seal creature. So call 5 is the last call. It's 40 minutes long. I believe that this is Art's last day on Coast to Coast Radio. I'm not 100% because he doesn't say anything relevant to that on this call, but I did read that his last day on the job, he did have Mel on. So I think this is the day that Art retired. So Mel starts by telling us he's not dead, which apparently people thought he had died. And he says, and this is a quote, "I'm not ready to eat the big green wiener yet." Has anyone ever heard that? Like, what? What is that? Is that a phrase that other people know? That's relevant to death?
No, I don't know. So.
I'm not ready to eat the big green wiener yet. I'm never ready to eat the big green wiener.
An alien wiener.
He says the Nevada hole seems to be under helicopter surveillance, but no military or troops have visited on foot. He said like one helicopter a week seems to fly over. That wasn't before. Then they go back to the ice from the first experiment in call 4. He has some updates on that. You know, they had lowered the ice into the Nevada hole and it became a heat source. I'm sure you guys remember because it was only a few minutes ago.
Yes.
So one of the guys that were with him from the Basque tribe took some of the material home to his little cabin and put it in their wood-burning stove. Mel claims it kept his cabin warm all winter, but not without issue. I mean, because would you do that? Like, I would be like, what am I breathing in? Like, that would be my first and foremost concern.
Mm-hmm.
You know how if you have, like, a fire going, like, things get dry?
Mm-hmm.
Well, apparently it was really dry. His skin started flaking, and so he put a kettle of water on, and then he could kind of see the steam. Instead of going, like, up above, like you would imagine steam, it, like, would turn and start to go toward the wood-burning stove, as if the wood-burning stove was absorbing the steam, or what was in the wood-burning stove.
Mm-hmm.
After some days of this, the stove collapses through the floor. And I guess these people, they live on a reservation, they're poor, so he does not take action. Like, he just leaves the wood-burning stove in the floor. And a few weeks later, the whole cabin collapses, and all that is left is dust, as if all the moisture was absorbed out of the wood. So what they're basically trying to insinuate is that this ice fuel substance is dry, like pulling the moisture so heavily out of everything, but it's also getting heavier as it does it, right? It's gaining weight and it's falling through. About a month later, he went to check on his cabin land, his previous cabin, the land, And the stove is 5 feet into the ground.
That's interesting because when you said that it collapsed, I was thinking like it's almost like something is like sucking it. Like, do you think that's the origin of the original hole?
They do speculate to that could be how the original hole was created.
Okay.
Mel claims that he called an associate from Australia with the Basque's approval to get a team out there, and scientists came. Now, why he would have to call someone in Australia and the scientists would come, I don't know. I mean, if he did live in Australia, he may know people in Australia, but also maybe that's a way to take out people in the U.S. so nobody can kind of track the activity.
Mm-hmm.
Or get the military involved right away.
And scientists came and got some huge industrial machinery, had a hell of a time getting it out of the hole. I guess they had to go back for more machinery, and then with several cranes and some chains, eventually pulled it out. Put it on a huge truck, hauled it away, and they never saw it again.
Just the stove?
The stove. Mm-hmm. They recap a bit about the seal creature, and the Basque claim that he comes to visit them. They occasionally see the creature. It speaks to the Basque through their boombox.
Their boombox? What's he say?
Well, he says that greedy and undisciplined use of the ice will destroy the world. I mean, what would a story like this be without impending doom? Mel goes into the Roosevelt dime he was given and claims that they can't photograph it, they can't scan it. And this is really where the claim of the 15 feet away disappeared, right? Mm-hmm. That comes into play. So, I mean, this basically ends with messages of our population's impending doom. He states that the creatures below, because there are more apparently, are waiting for our demise so they can live here. And that is how Call 5 ends. And that is the last anyone has ever heard from Mel Waters. No one can prove that Mel ever existed or lived in Washington. No one has ever actually found the hole. But people have found holes that they speculate could be Mel's hole.
Do you think if he was real, that the government erased evidence of Mel?
Maybe. Could be. I even tried to look up a Mel Waters in Australia.
Right.
It's hard to tell. I mean, first of all, is this current? Could this guy still be alive?
Well, if he was...
This was the early
2000s.
2000s.
Right?
Yeah, I mean, he could be, but he also could not be, right? Yeah. It's a good question. I had always known about, like, the legend of Mel's Hole. I did not know about this entire saga.
Maybe it's like some like radioactive, and that's why his stories get kind of progressively crazier. Maybe he's like exposed to whatever's coming out of that hole.
Right.
This was such a big story that, I mean, we did mention the Ballad of Mel's Hole. There's a show called Outer Range. I think it's unofficial, but it's like people believe that Mel's Hole inspired the show Outer Range. I guess like season 2 just started.
So it's a newer show.
It is a newer show. Mm-hmm. Jeff watched season 1, but I don't think that they claim that that is inspiration. But people say that it follows the story too much to not be. There's been drinks that have been named after Mel's Hole. There was an art exhibit, aspects of Mel's Hole. There's a lot of podcasts. And if you look on Google Maps, because I'm just on Google Maps, like looking at Ellensburg, and I just was like, I'm just going to type in Mel's Hole. And, well, here it is. Not in the right spot, not where Mel claimed it to be, but someone thought that they found Mel's Hole. That they think that this has to be it, right?
They claimed Mel's Hole.
And if you click on it, they did. If you click on it, there's pictures. You know how Google Maps has like pictures, but it's like all different holes, right? It's not actually of the hole that's there. Those pictures, I don't think any of them are really of this particular hole, but it's in Weimar, Washington. What really got me about this Google Maps pin, the comments, which there's quite a few, and I'm going to read a couple. Man, the latest one is from a week ago, by the way.
Popular, man.
So this is from Christina Russell, and it is her Google review on Mels Hole. In 1987, after a long night of drinking and a couple of out-of-this-world dares, my 2 best friends from grade school, along with myself and a mysterious native we picked up hitchhiking on the way, found ourselves deep in what I now know to be Mels Hole. When I first saw it, it was surrounded by a lot of bush, but after a few minutes of trimming, we set our gaze upon Mels Hole. With nothing left to do to it, we began to test our theories. First, it was small things like pebbles, a couple of nuts we found on the ground, and things like that. But after not being satisfied, we decided we really needed to find a way to properly penetrate Mels Hole. So with the right amount of nerve worked up, the 4 of us, yes, even the native was in on it, donned our protective gear and began to get right on into Mels Hole. Of course the tales are true. We never hit the bottom. None of us. We didn't scrape the side. We did scrape the sides rather easily, though. After being let down yet again, we decided to pack it up and leave before the barbiturates wore off and Mel woke up and realized we had plundered his hole like we did. I did hear later that the governor did come and shut Mel's hole up, which is okay with me. Nothing good ever came out of it anyway. This is from L.P. Harris. It says local guide. 2 hunters were out in the woods one day when they came upon a hole. Looking down into the hole, they couldn't see the bottom, only darkness. One of the hunters says, "Let's throw something down in the hole and see if we can hear it hit the bottom." They look around and see a large rock near the edge of the hole. They go over to the rock and manage to push it into the hole. As they were standing there, looking over the edge of the hole, waiting to see if they could hear the rock hit bottom, a goat came crashing through the trees and ran up to the hole and without hesitation jumped in head first. While they were standing there staring at each other in amazement, they peered into the hole, just trying to figure out what this was all about. Just then an old farmer walked up. "Hi, guys. Did either of you happen to see my goat?" The first hunter said, "Funny you should ask. We were just standing here a minute ago, and a goat came running out of the bushes doing about 100 miles an hour and jumped headfirst into this hole." The old farmer said, "Nah, that's impossible. I had him chained to a big rock." There's a lot of people talking about, like, this is not the correct location. You know, just a lot of Mels Hole's fans on here, talking about the government. The main consensus for people who believe in Mels Hole seems to be that when the government was out there, they covered up the hole. And that's why no one ever found Mels Hole. So have you guys ever heard of the Oppenheimer report?
No.
Does that have to do with the movie?
Mm-mm.
What is the Oppenheimer report?
I am not very familiar with it. But, you know I've heard of it. So I think it's been going on for quite a while. Maybe it used to be an old radio show or something, but now you can listen to it in a podcast. So I found the Oppenheimer Reports podcast on Mels Hole. And he claims that he knew Art Bell. And that one of Art Bell's ham radio friends and him made a deal. And that's how the story of Mels Hole came about. Is that true? I don't know. So Mels Hole, fact or fiction? What do you guys think?
Maybe both.
Yeah, I'm thinking there's a hole somewhere that people throw a bunch of crap into.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe it just doesn't disappear. Maybe it's just a deep hole.
Mm-hmm. I think, I think there could be a hole, but like all that other weird stuff, I don't know.
You don't believe in the fetal seals?
Coming out of a sheep, no. And coming back to visit and talking through a boombox.
The dog that came back to life.
I would like to believe in the Pet Cemetery hole.
I would too.
Only not if it was Pet Cemetery, though.
No,
right? Oh, wait,
not
because in the
me.
Pet Cemetery, the pets were nice, though, right?
No.
It was just, they weren't. No, I've seen the
Remember
movie.
the cat?
Church?
No, I'm really, that does ring a bell. I'm really bad at remembering movies.
But the dog obviously wasn't the same when it came back out. Like, even though they didn't say it was, like, ferocious or anything, if the dog didn't go back to its owner, I feel like that dog wasn't the same.
Right.
It probably wasn't the same dog.
Right. They said it was the same.
Same collar, same whatever, but you know.
Could be, could not
They
be.
had a sale at the local
Yeah.
pet supply. I mean, because I think it was like a hunting dog.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I feel like in that area, maybe a lot of people would have hunting dogs that would look similar, right?
Definitely. And I think, you know, like I mentioned earlier, just when listening to the phone calls, like I almost, it seems kind of like Mel believes what he's saying. Or he's a really good actor.
Yeah, he doesn't sound crazy. He does sound a little crazier, I think, toward the end of the phone calls. I mean, when he's saying the really crazy things about the seal and stuff. But he
that
still
makes sense
doesn't
what
sound
Kelly
crazy.
said, though. Like, if there's radiation or something coming out of that hole, he would get
Right.
crazier.
And that, you know, maybe that cures cancer or whatever.
Or
he
gave
had.
him cancer
Yeah.
to begin
Maybe
with.
it gave him cancer and then cured it. I do think that there's a lot of aspects of this that are very, like, conspiracy theory feeding. Like,
Yeah.
what do people love to hear? They love to hear about cures for cancer.
Military taking over.
Military
somebody's
taking
property.
over.
Secret government,
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. You know, there's paranormal aspects to it. To me, there's just too many different things all wrapped in one. I would like to believe in Mels.
It's also like a little tiny bit Stranger Things.
Oh, yeah. That is true.
Kind of reminds me of that.
A lot of people were calling into the radio, like, during phone call 1 and saying, like, I want to go into the hole. Like, I would go into the hole. Which, to me, is just crazy. You should never jump into Mel's hole.
Never go in a hole that you don't know.
Yes, stay out of holes.
Never explore a hole you don't know.
Yes.
That is our advice for this podcast. If you take anything away from this episode,
Know your hole.
yeah.
And on that note,
It's been a whole lot of fun.
thanks for listening. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.